The acquaintances went for seconds and said, "The food is nice here." "Yes," said another. Emerald was bored, so she left. "Good day," she said to them. When she entered the hall, she noticed that there were bags littering the floor. Backpacks, rather. Were they holding an assembly? Then she saw the ashes. Oh! They had all been cremated. "They are gone," Kenneth said. "No crap," Emerald said. "They were destroyed by the dragon who breathes its fire still. Slay it with a sword. Here." "But the backpacks! I wonder why they weren't touched," said Kenneth. "They did get them from the school, after all. They must be ordinary." "I hate you," said Emerald. "The gymnasium. There's your revenge." And she entered it, and there was a dragon, a gray dragon with a black work painted on its forehead. 2 words, actually. The first word, dusk, and the second word, torture. Imagine a land where this murderous intent could run freely and all boundaries removed, but this would be troubling, wouldn't it? To torture. She fired acid at it, but it burned it with its hot fire. She swung her white sword, and its power drove away the fire. "You'll only have 3 swings," said Kenneth from nowhere in particular. That was swing 1. A new burst of flames. She hid behind bleachers. Apparently they were resistant to fire also. Most peculiar. She was stuck there for a while until she could plan her next move. "Coward," said Kenneth. "You don't fight dragons?" said Emerald pointedly. "No, dragons are slayed by warriors. I am a mage, a shaman." "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't kill dragons." "Whatever." And she ran out from the bleachers with both her hands on the hilt of the sword, and fire flew as she slashed through the flares and ran towards the dragon, which took flight. Then it fell upon her with claws outstretched, and as it fell she threw the sword with all her might, and Kenneth watched coldly. He did not help her. His choice was to watch and record. What happened to that sword? It flew with a mind of its own at the neck of the dragon, then an explosion of light and a sound of thunder, and down fell the head of the dragon. But what happened to Emerald? She had rolled out of the way. Kenneth clapped. "You're quite the dragon slayer." Hidden strengths and hidden turmoils torment us all. They make us struggle as vines drag us down, and grapes and wine make us drunk and merry a short while. While winter... A cloaked figure. Her rival threw purple acid at her, but she countered with her own. They grabbed the head of the dragon and hoisted it over their head, then vanished with a flap of butterfly wings. A fairy? Everyone at the school was sent home. Letters were given, reassuring parents about their children's safety. As for the ones who died, those were administration matters. "Marksingale, great fairy of our master's creation," said the orange-haired man. "You can rival Acidwitch." "No," said many voices from the cloak. And 2 red lasers came from Marksingale's eyes and tried to destroy the orange-haired man. "This matter won't kill me," he said. And he fired blue lasers from his own eyes and deflected the red lasers. Then he pulled out a dagger to kill her, but she blocked with an axe, and they fought like this for a while, until they were tired, and the orange-haired man said, "The moon is full tomorrow. When the werewolves come, kill Acidwitch, or I'll notify the master of your pitiful failures." "That dragon was birthed in your laboratory," said Marksingale, with her many voices. She was angry. "Yes, but you misused it. I paid a lot of money for that creature to be made. If you even mention it again, I'll..." "Thaddeus, it's fine. I hate you. I'll serve you loyally," said Marksingale, and she vanished, and Thaddeus, the orange-haired man, smiled, and then brushed off his suit. Marksingale was another creation from Thaddeus's laboratory, but she was more advanced than the dragon. She was the simulation of a wood fairy, but was given powers to rival Acidwitch. "Burn in your minds the face of the Emperor Charles. May his reign continue evermore," shouted the trumpet man, and Blue Star walked forward and bowed at the throne of Charles. Then Charles smacked him on the head with a die. He studied another in his hand, a blue one with glowing white dots. Although Charles was quite old, he looked to be very young. He had the appearance of a child, actually, although he could change this at will. Dreams are complexes, and my mind burns impulses into them. 1,000 plus hatred, and the vines return to restrain her. Marksingale, that vile fairy with supernatural powers of her own, restrained Emerald as she was walking home. The ovens at the bakery were hot for her. Bake, shouted Marksingale. Never, shouted Acidwitch, or Emerald, should I say. So close to burning in the oven, but Marksingale was kicked in instead. Many cries erupted from her mouth, many voices from the many souls who inhabited her. Borrowed souls, called unnaturally from their owners and imprisoned in her body. In its body. In Marksingale's body. Whether thing or person. Did Marksingale die? Did Emerald win? Did Acidwitch win? You're late, said Kenneth. There's to be a meeting in the stars, and you are invited. Am I invited? Asked the Tiger Man from the air. No, said Kenneth coldly. They departed. Marksingale reformed, put back on her cloak, and flew away. She had many souls, terrible though she was. But Charles was displeased with his son for being late to the meeting. Blue Star was there already, of course. I'll deal with you later, he said to Kenneth. Acidwitch, you are a reborn supernatural, correct? Whatever, said Acidwitch. You will address me with the utmost respect, or I'll strip your bones from your body. You're worse than Kenneth. Rightfully so. Now you will do away with Tiger Man. He unbalances our universe, you see. Why would I care? Well said, said Kenneth. Shut up, both of you. Now listen, you will kill Tiger Man together, and then I will have absolute sway over all forces. Do you understand? My father is wicked, said Kenneth to himself. Silence, shouted Charles, and he blew Kenneth away with a fierce wind. It cut his face and arms. It was sharp and violent. You're terrible, shouted Acidwitch, and she threw acid at Charles. He closed his eyes and warped from his throne. He warped behind her. Trite, he said, and he pushed her lightly, and she tripped and fell from the sky. She fell into shadowy night. There were no stars, but there was a lot of fire. Balls of fire flew past her, and she fell into dark, murky water. There was no moon. Only balls of fire lit this place. It was hot, unbearably hot, but not as hot in the water. She waded her way to a sandy shore, but the sand was gray, and she saw a shack ahead, a wooden one, and roaches crawled out of it in great number, and on the front door hung a skull to be used as a knocker. She walked up to the door, wiping tears and murky water from her eyes. Her nice clothes were ruined. Her hair was ruined, and she was in this awful place. What torture! She shouted. Then she slammed the skull into the door, and it shattered, making a loud sound which echoed. You will die for coming here. The door opened immediately, and sucked her in. Then it slammed shut. A new skull appeared to replace the old one, but more importantly, she stood in front of Tiger Man, and next to him on either side were Tatiana and Emily. But they are not important. Die, said Tiger Man, and a red vapor left his sharp-toothed and hairy mouth, and entered Emerald's nostrils, and made her sinuses burn, and her head also burned inside, and she fell to the wooden floor in a crumpled heap, dead, just like that. What shall we do with the body? Asked Emily. You know Tiger Man will eat her, said Tatiana. This child was sent to kill me, said Tiger Man, but the balance remains. She would have been quite useful if Mr. Dice hadn't meddled. You are to be exterminated in the name of my father, said Kenneth. Who knew how he got in? But he was holding the blade of a white sword towards Tiger Man. Exterminate me then, said Tiger Man, and he shed his clothes and erupted into flames, which set the floorboards on fire, and Emily and Tatiana squealed and ran out the front door. Tiger Man rushed forward with a flaming fist, and Kenneth swiftly twirled his sword, then swung it to cut it off, but instead the sword gave a clang, and hitting the Tiger Man's wrist was like hitting iron. Kenneth formed a second sword from the air. another white one to match the other. He had one in his right hand and one in his left. He and Tiger Man continued to parry and lash out at one another, but the white swords kept touching the ground, and white lines began to form on the floor. "It's futile, warrior," said Tiger Man. "I'm not a warrior," said Kenneth. Then he crossed the blades in front of him and raised them above his head, and a torrent of white chains erupted from the floor where the lines were and entangled Tiger Man. Of course he smashed them easily, and grabbed Kenneth with his flaming claws, and burned him entirely. He gave a loud cry, and was no more, save for a small glass sphere which fell to the floor and rolled into the cracks. "What nonsense," said Tiger Man. Then he turned to finish Emerald. Though she was dead, he had to get rid of her body. He raised his claw to cremate it, but her body disappeared. Frustrating, I know, when those things we wish for slip from our grasp. Tiger Man roared in anger, and that's all for now with him.